The Camelia Transplant, a short story. The narrator relates encounters with a disagreeable gardener. Barry was unamused, permanently. You could never get a smile out of Barry, or even a curly lip. He was the garden slug at the retirement village where I often attended as an odd job man along with my sidekick Casper. We would arrive in the truck, dismount with tools laden, and Barry would emerge from a hedge, unsmiling, and berate us for our plug-ins. He was a hand tool man. "This is a retirement village," he says, "an above-ground cemetery. If you start those power tools up, it could frighten some of the inmates to death." Power tools were among his numerous misgivings. In general, he didn't like odd jobbers, tradesmen, handymen, painters, plumbers, roofers, workers of any kind. He was uniformly surly and disagreeable to Casper and me. There was nothing for it though. For a start, Casper was from the new generation of carpenters. He was trained on nail guns. He never even used a hammer. He was lost without power tools. If he didn't make a racket, he wasn't on the job. Sometimes we would be up on a ladder with a circular saw roaring like a hyena as we cut out the wood rot from Mr. Jackson's veranda post, and suddenly the saw would shut down and Casper and me would look at each other bewildered. Barry had pulled the plug. He walks up to us with the power cord in his hands, holds it up and says, "Mrs. Kennedy in number 6 is trying to sleep. It's Tuesday. She sleeps in on Tuesdays." That is good enough for us. We knock off, go for coffee and come back the next day. You don't argue with Barry. You meet him pushing a wheelbarrow one day, tending to the daffodils at number 26, Mrs. Corrigan, 94 years old, not out. It's a sunny morning. You're feeling sociable. Mr. Linton in number 19 needs his pipes blasted. "What did you do before this, Barry?" you ask him. He puts down the wheelbarrow, hitches his gloves and looks up. "Before this?" he returns, as if to say, "Do you really want to know?" Then he says, picking up a trowel, "Before this, I was a trained killer. You know, take out the Paraguayan foreign minister with a dinner fork, that sort of thing." Casper and me just look at him. There is not the slightest detour in his garden slug eyes. For all intents and purposes, he is serious. It stopped being fun after a while, he then explains, and goes back to the daffodils. "What's with Barry?" says Casper to me later, back in the truck. "Too much Roundup," I suggest. His full biography, when he cares to share it, is even more extensive. He walks up to us one morning, a big clutch of anguished weeds trooping in his hands. He has just ripped them out by the roots. Without any provocation or even context, he explains his habitation. "The judge says to me, 'Barry, you're a trained killer for God's sake. Surely you can find something useful to do with your skills.' And I thought, 'You're right, Your Honour. Weeding. I'm good at removing weeds.'" It is because there is not the remotest murmur of kidding in these attestations that Casper and me decide it is better not to argue with Barry. We are sandblasting Mr. Coogan's brickwork in number 39 one day, when Barry walks up, makes us stop, and holds up a lonely weed. "Look at this," he says grimly. We look at it. "Thorny gypweed," he explains. "Dracodonis endidimona." There is a heavy silence. "Gee, that's no good, Barry," you say eventually. He snorts and walks away. He has been the garden slug at the retirement village for a long month of sunny Sundays. As he says, it's an above-ground cemetery. He watches inmates come and go. He is pruning roses and waving to Mrs. Devon in the distance. "You see Mrs. Devon over there," he says. "Well, she's dying. In fact, she's as good as dead." He waves again and calls out, "Good morning, Mrs. Devon." If it wasn't for a few medical inconveniences like a pulse, he says, they'd declare her dead already. We find him inordinately consultative when it comes to the inmates. We are refitting Mr. Hudson's kitchen cupboards one day, and Barry is trimming lawn. We are there when Heather Finlay, the daughter and custodian of old Mrs. Finlay in number 12, walks up to him and reports, "Mr. Grady says that Mum is going to need another bypass, Barry." Barry steadies his hand-drawn trimmer at its current location and emerges. "Nonsense, Heather," he says. "You tell Dr. Grady there is no question of a bypass until her BGL is stable under 150. Heather agrees and says, "Thanks, Barry," and walks away. He goes back to trimming. He had it in his head that we carried weed seeds on our work boots. Often, when he talked to us, he would stare at our feet, frowning at any muddy conveyance. Barry conducts a personal war on weeds. Fescue, cooch, wandering Jew, golden milkweed, misty cobbler, Carolina comboba, fartwort, cat's claw, Chilean needlegrass, tart's arrowhead, ciguatera, Madagascar ragwort, lantana camara, lamb's gimlet, ugly tusset, taxicarum. Caspar and I had finished up one afternoon and were heading back to the truck. I stop and point to a tiny, pathetic, intrepid seedling, an intruder, lurking beneath a daphne. "Look at that," I say. "That'll give Barry nightmares." Caspar laughs. Then, arriving one day, Barry is waiting for us. He is even more unamused than usual. "Come and look at this," he says. He takes us to number 17, Mr. Pearson, and stands us in front of an unhappy shrub. "This is Mrs. Pearson," he says, pointing to the shrub. "We planted this the day of her funeral. Mr. Pearson comes out and talks to her every morning." "What is it, Barry?" asks Caspar. "It's a camellia," says Barry, "reticulata, and your ladder has mangled its roots." We had, in fact, fixed some spouting there a few weeks before, and to be honest, the bush was in the way. The ladder legs might have burrowed into the soil, perhaps. "You've killed her," says Barry. "Gee, I'm sorry, Barry." "Well, we're going to have to replace her. Luckily, Mr. Pearson is in having a hip replacement. He gets home tomorrow. Caspar and me are booked to make lots of noise with power tools at Mrs. Dobson's at number 49, but Barry has other plans. "We're going to need your truck," he says. "Where are we going?" I ask. "I told you, we have to replace Mrs. Pearson." "A nursery?" I say. "No," he says. "You won't get a reticulata like this in a nursery," as if I was an idiot. We climb into the truck and head off to a destination that is, it turns out, 6 suburbs and a whole freeway away. Barry says little during the journey. Caspar says, "Camellias, Barry, are they native?" "Don't be stupid," he says, and Caspar doesn't ask any more questions. At length we arrive at an establishment called the Westwood Ponds Retirement Village, not unlike our familiar retirement village, only more spacious and slightly upmarket. We drive in, skirt the interior roads, and settle out the front of number 46. Driving in, Barry remonstrates. Slow down. It was a 5-kilometre zone. I was speeding and the truck was noisy, according to Barry. "Mr. Fabriano's," Barry explains as we pull up. "He's in hospital. I spoke to the specialist this morning. He's not coming home." We observed that out the front of number 46 is an identical camellia, only robust and showy, to which Barry refers erstwhile as Mrs. Fabriano. We are only there a few minutes when one of the residents approaches. "Good morning, Barry," he says. "I hear management has some applicants for Mr. Fabriano's already." "No," says Barry firmly. "If you mean that guy with the camper van, no, he's not moving in here." The resident notes duly and walks away. At this point I feel I have to ask, out of curiosity, just how many retirement villages are you the gardener at, Barry? "A few," he says, but isn't interested in the question. The job at hand is removing Mrs. Fabriano and taking her back to pretend to be Mrs. Pearson. I take hold of the shrub's trunk and give it a shake. It seems firm to me. How do we do it, Barry, I wonder? I've got a tow rope in the truck. We could drag it out. That's how you treat a lady, is it? Says Barry. We were going to remove Mrs. Fabriano with delicate respect. Caspar takes to it with a garden fork, but very quickly Barry stops him and has occasion to question his manhood. You guys have no idea how to treat a lady, he says. You don't just stick in your tongs and jiggle them around until she gives up. He demonstrates the proper technique. Sensitive roots, he says, and then adds, you guys have never had a sensitive root in your life. As I say, he is unerringly disagreeable to Caspar and me. If we move Mrs. Fabriano carefully, he explains, she won't shed her flowers and Mr. Pearson would be none the wiser. But Mrs. Fabriano doesn't want to leave. She hangs on tight. We try to lift her gently, loosening all around, but she isn't for the moving. Give me a few minutes alone with her, says Barry. Caspar and me go and sit in the truck. I do my lotto numbers. 10 minutes later, all resistance is gone. Mrs. Fabriano lets go, and the shrub comes out without any further dramas. What did you say to her, Barry? Asked Caspar, intrigued. You really know nothing about ladies, do you? Says Barry. We hoist the shrub into the truck. On the way back, Caspar asks, were you really a trained killer, Barry? Someone's got to do it, says Barry. We arrive back with Barry once again making a fuss about the noisy truck. Go easy, he says to me as I swing in. Some of these people are on death's door. He likes a quiet retirement village. No sooner do we arrive, rip out dead Mrs. Pearson and lower Mrs. Fabriano from the truck tray, when Mr. Long from number 18 shuffles over. Barry, he says, we've got 36 coming to the pizza night on Thursday, but the pizza guy says he's putting his prices up to $18.95. What? Says the gardener. $14.95, with a senior's discount. Well, he says $18.95, says Mr. Long. Mr. Long is definitely on death's door. You can almost see the angels gathering around him to carry him away. Leave it with me, says Barry, picking up a shovel. As we lug Mrs. Fabriano to her new abode, he muses, I said to my parole officer once, the only difference between a weed and a flower is location. They're all plants, but weeds are where they shouldn't be. And he adds biographically, it was dish pig or garden slug. They both pay $20 an hour. Garden slug, no doubt, is the more noble occupation. You get your hands dirty on the life cycle of the world, but it's outdoor work and the weeds are relentless. It would take some persuasion to turn Mrs. Fabriano into Mrs. Pearson, though. We lower her in and Barry tickles her roots with his horticultural fingers. For my part, I can't tell one reticulata from another, but Mrs. Fabriano is in bloom and looks the healthy specimen. Would she make a convincing Mrs. Pearson? Her flowers are pink, her leaves are dark green. Mr. Pearson, in any case, has advanced dementia, Barry says, and has trouble remembering his own name. There is, therefore, some leeway. The two shrubs are about the same size, with roughly the same aspect. Mrs. Fabriano should settle in. Mr. Pearson will step out every morning, call her Gladys, and tell her how the Japanese have just bombed Darwin. The camellia will smile in the morning sun and remind him of the pretty girl he married 60 years ago. Barry goes and fetches a hose. Keep her wet, he says, pouring on the water and giving us some further advice on the way to treat ladies. I look at Caspar. I can see that he agrees we have had enough gardening for one day. Well, we better be going, Barry, I say. He remains surly, not a smile, not even a curl of the lip. Keep it quiet on the way out, he says. This is an above-ground cemetery, not a racetrack. We therefore drive out quietly in the truck. I take the speed humps at a snail's pace. He's an interesting guy, Barry, isn't he? Says Caspar as we drive away. Too much roundup, I say again.